Documented cases show spyware, mass phone searches, and biometric tracking erode privacy and civic freedom. Surveillance has become a deliberate instrument of control. Across continents, phone search programs, zero-click spyware, biometric cameras, and mass data harvesting have been used to identify, detain, torture, and silence journalists, politicians, activists, and entire communities. These case summaries show how private vendors and state agencies turn everyday devices into instruments of repression. CCP authorities built a mass surveillance system in Urumqi. The system automatically scanned about 1.2 million phones. Human Rights Watch found many flagged files were ordinary Islamic materials, such as the Quran. Regional police used the system to detain and interrogate people for having religious apps. The campaign is part of broader repression of Uyghurs and other Muslims. Human rights groups say the abuses amount to crimes against humanity. Since 2021, authorities carried out mass cell phone searches in Tibetan areas. People were compelled to install surveillance apps. Monks, students, and others were arrested for alleged banned content. Human Rights Watch reports torture and deaths in custody. Many phones in Tibet now function as government tracking devices. Investigations show foreign tech firms supplied software and analytics for China's surveillance systems. These tools were integrated into policing systems used to monitor populations. Systems were used to grade and manage people at scale. Companies provided infrastructure and services that enabled surveillance. Questions remain about vendor awareness and responsibility. A former ByteDance executive claimed China had backdoor access to TikTok data. Internal networks and SIM card information were used to identify protesters in Hong Kong. Pro-democracy activists and civil rights organizers were targeted. Platforms can become tools for identifying and tracking dissent. Citizen Lab forensic work documents Pegasus targeting lawyers and investigators in Mexico. Operators gained remote access to messages, microphones, and locations. Targets included those probing massacres and disappearances. Prosecutors have been accused of negligence and violating due process. Access Now and Citizen Lab found Pegasus used against activists and journalists in Jordan. At least 35 civil society figures were compromised. Targets included lawyers and human rights staffers. Victims described sustained harassment and intimidation. Spyware gained access to cameras, microphones, and stored data. This constituted a serious breach of privacy and freedom of expression. Amnesty International's Security Lab confirmed Pegasus infections of activists in Kazakhstan. At least 4 activists' phones were compromised in June 2021. Attackers accessed calls, messages, location, and device sensors. This represented targeted state surveillance that violated privacy and civic freedoms. Reports indicate graphite spyware intercepted WhatsApp communications in Italy. At least 7 phones were infected, including journalists and activists. Targets included investigative reporters and migrant rights advocates. Those targeted said the surveillance chilled free expression. One of the targeted journalists said, "I feel violated." Amnesty found police in Serbia used commercial tools to unlock detainees' phones during interviews. Forensic evidence showed spyware installations that gave authorities remote access. Microphones, cameras, and personal data were exposed. Journalists and activists hacked in detention, reported trauma and self-censorship. Victims described Serbia as a digital prison. Under Section 702, the U.S. National Security Agency, or NSA, collects international communications in bulk. Programs like PRISM and Upstream gather large volumes of data. Civil liberties groups report the government stores more than 1 billion communications a year. The FBI has conducted backdoor searches of this database in domestic cases. Court records showed queries on hundreds of thousands of U.S. persons. Warrantless collection and use of this data undermines privacy and chills expression. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, can tap into networked license plate readers across cities. That data can be shared with local police to track vehicles and identify addresses. The agency pursued graphite spyware capable of zero-click exploits. Civil rights groups warn these tools expose immigrants and advocates to surveillance. Surveillance increases the risk of detention and deportation. Cambridge Analytica harvested data from millions of Facebook users in the U.S. The firm compiled thousands of data points per person to build psychographic profiles. Likes, shares, friend networks, and inferred traits were combined to target voters. Micro-targeted political ads were used to influence opinions and turnout. This shows how surveillance capitalism can distort democratic processes. The European Court of Human Rights ruled Russia's use of facial recognition cameras violated democratic norms. Cameras identified and led to the arrest of a protester in the Moscow metro. The court found this surveillance incompatible with the right to protest. Facial recognition can chill public assembly and dissent. Authorities in Germany wiretapped and monitored communications and location data of climate activists. Activists said surveillance and house searches aimed to criminalize peaceful protest. Privacy advocates opposed the measures, but a court ruled the wiretapping lawful. The case raises questions about proportionality and civil liberties. A leaked list of roughly 50,000 phone numbers revealed cross-border targeting by Pegasus. The list included journalists, activists, politicians, and business figures. The revelation prompted forensic follow-ups, legal scrutiny, and calls for stricter controls. Law enforcement increasingly uses social media monitoring tools to track protesters. Fusion centers and intelligence offices share collected data. This can result in inappropriate monitoring of ordinary political speech. Surveillance risks deterring people from joining protests and exercising free speech. Surveillance is not a neutral technology. It is a weapon used to silence dissent and entrap communities. Mass phone searches, biometric tracking, zero-click spyware, and bulk data harvesting have enabled arrests, torture, intimidation, and the chilling of speech and association. Left unchecked, these practices erode privacy rights and corrode democratic institutions. Everyday devices become instruments of repression. The evidence demands urgent collective action to reclaim privacy and protect civic space. States and vendors must be held accountable. These abuses show surveillance is not theoretical. It is already a global industry. Reduce exposure and encrypt your communications where possible. Limit app permissions, keep software updated, and use strong authentication. Consider tools that minimize data collection and strengthen device security. One option is a zero-trust VPN like vp.net. Sign up today to reduce your exposure, encrypt your communications, and make it harder for surveillance systems to follow you. vp.net, the only VPN that you don't have to trust, because it can't spy on you.